Welcome to the High Performance Cult Podcast by hpcult.com. We bring you the minds behind the machines, the builders, the risk takers, and the leaders shaping high performance in every form. If you live for speed, precision, and pushing the limits, you're in the right place. This week takes us to Vintage Air for a chat with Rick Love. Rick is the president of Vintage Air, the world's leading manufacturer of performance air conditioning systems for hot rods, sport trucks, and classic cars. Based in San Antonio, Texas, Vintage Air has been setting the industry standard since 1976, delivering top-tier climate control solutions for high-performance builds. A lifelong hot rod enthusiast, Rick built his first project, a 1940 Chevy Coupe in the late 70s, and later became a Vintage Air dealer and installed air conditioning kits at his home garage before joining the company in 1998, helping to drive its innovation and growth. Welcome to the High Performance Cult Podcast brought to you by hpcult.com. My name is Joseph Potak, and today we're at Vintage Air with Rick Love. Thanks,
Welcome.
Rick. Thank you for showing me around. Thanks for bringing me into your home away from home.
Excited to have you.
Yeah. So let's talk about what got you into. Are you into cars?
Yes, always have. I kind of grew up around about it. My dad was a car guy, kind of a poor man's car guy, and did his own maintenance and kind of some things like that, and maintenance for other guys as well. And a good friend of his was a stock car guy, dirt track guy. So he spent some time there, and I spent some time around him. So I kind of grew up around that, and that kind of morphed from the dirt track stuff into hot rods, and that was actually in the Northeast. I grew up in the Northeast. And I moved to Texas, upstate New York, place called Binghamton, New York, upstate New York.
I've been through there.
A long way from the city, but I moved to Texas in '82. So I've been down here for a good long while now, 40 plus years and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I got, when I moved here, had a hot rod, I had a 40 Chevy Coupe that I had built. And from there I had a 40 Pontiac, a chop top sedan. And being from the Northeast, it wasn't air conditioned. And, from all the magazines and all of that, one of the first guys I met here was good friends with Jack Chisenhall, who founded Vintage Air, and Vintage Air was not too far from here.
What year did Vintage Air start?
76.
Okay, so Jack not too long after you founded it.
Yeah.
You actually met up with him.
He started in 76. And at that time, it was kind of he did Vintage Air and also was doing dealer installed stuff, like a lot of these fledgling businesses start out. They were kind of you did what you could. You did what you had to,
Throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then as the business grew, it became, completely hot rod centric. And, Jack was a real innovator. I mean, he was basically created a segment of the industry. I mean, he recognized the need, smaller cars, the hot rods and pre-48s were small cabin space, and they needed an AC system designed for a small package, that you could hide behind the dash. And, he made some of his own designs and started buying some parts and assembling them, doing his own thermoforming. He had a small thermoform machine and started doing things basically for hot rods. That was his focus initially, and nobody was doing anything at that point. No. If you had AC in a hot rod back then, it was, a knee knocker under dash or something like that,
Right.
So he was a real innovator and always on the edge of technology, and, grew the company through the years. And so it's been a great ride going on close to 50 years now.
Wow. That's a legacy company at that point. That's pretty neat. And if you don't have a car with AC in Texas, there's about 6 weeks in the spring and 6 weeks in the fall you could drive your car, and that's really it. You get almost 2.5 months of enjoyment if the weather's good. If the weather's good.
And we had talked earlier so much about how the world has changed now and how much Texas has changed in the last 20, 30 years, and how much the population has grown and how many more people there are. My goodness, you drove down here today, and even on the back roads, I'm sure there was a ton of traffic.
Yeah. I met more traffic than I thought on a weekday.
Yeah. And even driving, I tell people that the cooler air, the clean, cool air is great to have in your car. But what you don't think about when you're adding a good climate control system is how much quieter it is when you have the windows rolled up. You can talk, you can listen to the radio, you can roll your windows down sometime and have an 18-wheeler drive by you with throwing stuff up and the noise and all of that. And it's not a pleasant driving environment.
Right. What year did you start at Vintage Air?
I've been here full time since '98. I actually met Jack, like I said, shortly after I moved here.
Okay.
And I actually worked at that time. I was working for a company. We built and sold simulators all over the world, driver simulators, amusement ride
Ah.
simulators, and all of that. So I
So
did a
the small ones that you'd see in a mall, or like the bigger ones like you'd see at like Universal
yeah,
Studios?
bigger ones.
Okay.
The bigger
Okay,
ones. And
cool.
the one that was most popular when I was there was about the size of a Chevy van. And you'd see it in a mall and
Yeah,
things
I've
like
seen
that. You know,
those.
that was the ones the company I worked for.
Oh,
And
neat.
consequently, with traveling so much, when I got home, I would have a week or two off. And having more time than money, and had built cars before I kind of started my own shop, where I started doing, you built cars, you know how it is. A lot of guys that can build a car, the thing that scares them the most is AC and wiring. So that's what I focused on. I had a little one-car garage. I did AC and wiring, and got to know Jack better. We became friends, and I was buying vintage air and selling vintage air, and we started doing some projects together, some R&D projects. I had a '39 Ford Coupe that was pretty much my daily driver then, that I still own.
Oh, neat.
And Jack was at the time morphing into using the newer, at the time, R134 Ace, refrigerant. And my 39 was probably the first hot rod in the country to have 134A refrigerant. we started working with different components to see what worked the best and all of that. So I did some work with him then, R&D and all of that. And then I started doing some shows for him. I would do power tour with him and do some other things, so he didn't have to take people out of the shop. I could do that part time, and had a good time with that. And then in '98 I came here full time. So I've been here
neat.
quite a while.
Yeah, that's
Long answer to a short question.
no, that's the answers. What I was going to ask is, you probably, even from then to now, you've seen a lot of changes.
Oh gosh, when I came to Vintage Air full time in '98, we had about 38 employees.
Oh, wow.
In a small building that we were bursting at the seams on in the late '90s. There, a little on the northeast side of San
38
Antonio.
is still a chunk of people.
It was still a good number of people. And then we built this building here and moved in here in 2002 and expanded it after the first couple of years. And as you saw in the tour, we're kind of tight in here now. I mean, we could use a little more space at times. And so it's grown, and now we've got 163 employees. And
Yeah.
so,
What did you started off doing events?
I started off part-time doing events.
And
yeah,
then
doing events
what
for
was
them and
your
some
full-
R&D projects.
What was your full-time setup when you
When I first met, I said I was selling and servicing
Selling and
those
servicing.
simulators.
Okay.
Yeah, doing
No, I meant
installations and so.
in,
At Vintage Air.
Vintage Air.
I came on board full time as VP of Sales and Marketing. So
Okay.
basically the sales. And at the time, though, the size we had, it was basically. There's another guy here that you'll meet. His name's Ryan Zwicker, and Ryan. Great guy, and Ryan started a couple months full time before I did. And Ryan was in engineering.
I've had some dialogue with Ryan
Yes.
doing my book stuff.
Smart guy.
Yep.
Smart
And,
guy.
I think Wayne was the other guy. I've talked
And Wayne's
to.
here too. And Ryan and Jack and I started working at the time. The systems we had were vacuum operated, and I had an electronics background. That's what I did before. So we kind of got together, and that's where we started working on the new electronically controlled systems at the time, which was the late 90s of the Gen 2 system, which was pretty revolutionary at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Without vacuum operated doors, these were electronically controlled doors and fully solid state and stuff. And it was a big leap forward at the time. And there was more travel on an electronic motor. So it allowed you to redesign the cases to get better performance, better airflow, better performance. So that was kind of the first thing. So we all, as you know, in a small business, you've been in many of them, everybody wears a lot of hats.
You wear every hat. Yes.
But that's what makes it interesting.
It does. And what's funny is nowadays, if I go and apply for a job, they'll be like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, what do you need? Because I can do all of it.
Right.
Where
got
do you
experience
need,
in a whole lot
where do
of
you need all of that?
avenues,
And
yeah.
that comes from working
Right.
at a small company, because you have to wear all of those
But that's
hats.
what makes it interesting. Again, you get to be part of the design process and the development process, and then the actual introduction and sales and all of that. And I mean, it's been a great ride here through the years. I've loved it.
And it definitely makes a difference being a car guy, somebody in this industry, because you understand what the customer needs, because you also are a customer. So you know what to bring to the table that people need.
Yep.
And because you're on the weekends, you're doing what the customers are doing too.
Yeah, and I had a lot of installation experience, and what I liked, what I didn't like, and Jack was the same way. And again, Jack is a hardcore hot rodder at heart, above anything else, and has been. So I mean, he ran his Studebaker 240 mile an hour out of Bonneville with the
That's
AC
that
on
black
and stuff.
one.
That's the black 53 out in the showroom. And yeah, so I mean, Jack was a hot rodder above all, and I think the core of our company is still people that are enthusiasts and passionate
That
car people as well.
definitely makes a difference. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that makes your products better when you have car people in an aftermarket performance type business.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. That Bonneville build, that sounds interesting. 203, that probably was, something like 700 horsepower, 800 horsepower?
Yeah, close to that, about 800.
About 800, yeah.
On a big block Chevrolet with carbureted. And that was
Big
his
block
actual,
Chevy
his
to the Studebaker.
his out the back door speed was 241
Oh, wow.
plus. So yeah, 202 average. So yeah, it was over 200. And
that sounds
he
cool.
was rolling.
Definitely rolling.
He was rolling.
Are you, you're in San Antonio. Is there any local stuff that you are part of in the local car scene, or is it more like kind of the nationwide stuff that like I'm used to?
Well, we do our open house every year, to invite all our local people here to come see the facility, take a tour like you do. And the other part of that open house that's really important to us is it allows our employees an opportunity. They build these systems every day and they see them leaving boxes and all of that. And it gives our employees a chance to bring their families down and see some of these cars and trucks and all of that these systems go in.
See the finished product where it actually ends up.
Exactly, where it ends up and the pride these people have and how much people are excited about the vintage air systems that these guys make. And it's really a fun event.
Well, even when I was pulling up, I noticed there was a lot of variants of cars. Like there's a lifted truck, there's a Monte Carlo SS.
That's my daily driver.
That's yours? You're the Monte Carlo guy. I love G-bodies. That's pretty neat. I wasn't sure if it was like a build or something.
No,
prototyping.
That's got our Gen 5 in it, but that actually, I had, it's an Aero Coupe. I had an Aero Coupe when they first came out and put almost 300,000 miles on it years ago.
I'm jealous.
And kind of had the itch again. So I've had that one about 3 years now.
But yeah, and usually you could tell if a shop is full of car guys based on what they're driving. If the people in the parking lot have cool cars, you're going to a really good place. If they're all out there in Honda Accords, which there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your beater car and you have something cool on the weekends, you're still a car guy. I get it. Fuel costs a lot.
but as you look around, like you said, our parking lot, and you'll see a 65 T-Bird that one of our sales guys drives. And then Wayne, our sales manager, that Wayne is a big square body truck guy. He's got multiple square bodies. And Ryan's got a 39 Ford. And so on a lot of times during the summer, we'll have a potluck day and everything and have it like a hot rod Friday with potluck lunch and have everybody drive their cars and everything. It's a fun deal and all of that. It really is.
Yeah. And going back to the tour, I was pretty amazed by how much stuff Vintage Air manufactures in-house. You don't rely on a whole lot of third-party manufacturing. Everything from front runner brackets to the integral water pump kit. I don't remember what that was called.
For our front runner and that cast front runner.
The cast front runner. You're making and machining all of that stuff here, all of the brackets for the controls, the billet front for the controls, the vacuum formed AC
all our plastics and stuff.
Boxes, HVAC units.
It's either injection molded plastic for some of our parts, which are made here locally, or it's thermoformed, and we do all our own thermoform.
Bending all of the brackets, bending the bezels, powder coating everything that needs to be powder coated, all of the base plates. It was a little bit overwhelming, actually, to go through and see all of that stuff, because I wasn't sure really what to expect. I didn't cheat and look on YouTube or anything before I got here. I never, for how close y'all are, I should have made it down here sooner, actually, to get the free tour.
Yeah, you definitely should have been here sooner. Definitely should have.
So as far as the cars, you're making kits for cars that actually even came with AC from the factory, like the G-Body came with that big suitcase looking thing under the hood, that ugly behemoth box that just gets in the way of the spark plugs and the exhaust and everything. So when you do a Vintage Air kit in that, everything's under the dash, right?
Basically, yeah. Your entire evaporator and blower motor and everything is under the dash.
Yeah,
so you have basically a smooth firewall that gives you a lot more room for an engine swap, or for even if you got the original engine, for access to, like you say, the spark plugs and things like that. So, and even if a car was air conditioned, you got a 68 Camaro or something that had air conditioning, that's 50-year-old technology now or more.
Right.
So the performance, it was designed for R12 refrigerant, vacuum operated systems. So the performance level of the systems that we're able to produce now is just vastly superior to what that OEM stuff was at the time.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's compact and it all fits underneath the dash, like you said. But it's also like my first gen Camaro. I think it has 3 fan speeds factory,
Right.
so you have
Variable
speed
Mhm.
for
Exactly.
the blower, which makes it nice because there are times when low speed's too low,
Right.
the middle speed's too high, and high speed just blows out
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
So having that adjustability makes a pretty big difference. And then plus, like you said, the systems were made for R12.
Right.
And I've retrofitted some R12 systems, but they're just not the same as
Yeah.
when you have R12 and R12 system, it's right. When you have 134A system and a 134A system, it's right. So having a system designed around 134A to go in a classic car
Yep.
or street rod build, it probably is game changing for those
Oh, it
guys.
is very much so. I liken it to the fact I used to race go-karts years ago, and some of the faster guys were running alcohol. I was running gas. So, you start thinking about, well, I just need to put alcohol in there. Well, if you take an engine, you're an engine guy, you take an engine that's set up for gas and all of a sudden you try to run it on alcohol, it's not going to run real well.
No.
You got to use some different components. There's different things involved with it. And it's the same way with an AC system. Those systems at that time were designed for the refrigerant R12. And the properties of R12 are different from the properties of 134A. And you got to use some different components. When you use the right components, 134A is every bit as good a refrigerant as R12 was. You'll have people say, well, my R12 always worked better. It worked better in that system because that wasn't designed to work with 134A. But man, you get in my Monte Carlo, again, I drive that car every day. That car will freeze you out, with 134A. It is, and you look at your late model, your 5th gen Camaro. It's a 134A car. It'll freeze you in there,
Yep.
So there's nothing wrong with the refrigerant. You just got to have the system designed.
You have
for
the
it.
right system for it, and it works as it should.
Yep.
So do you daily your Monte Carlo?
I do. That's my drive every day.
So you are a real car guy.
Every day.
You're,
I've got that. I've got an old 66 El Camino that I kind of rotate them somewhat. The El Camino right now, I broke the motor on it a couple of weeks ago. I broke the crankshaft on it. So
were you
it's
doing
kind of
something
in
silly
timeout.
with it?
No,
or
I
did it just
actually
break?
wasn't. I was coming home from the airport at 1:30 in the morning when it decided to become a 2-piece crankshaft. So
what engine is that?
little 327.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's not common.
No, it's a first for me, and I've blown up some engines in my time, but it was a first for me.
That's a cast crankshaft?
Yeah, I haven't pulled the pan off it yet. It broke right in front of the rear main where you could just spin the flange.
I have had some small block Chevy cranks break for customers, but I've never broken one myself. So I've seen them break, but it makes some weird sounds when it breaks.
I actually thought the transmission, it's got a 5-speed in it, and I actually thought the transmission had a main bearing going out. It had started having some vibration, and it felt like it was far back. And it felt like it was a transmission issue until it wasn't.
What engine's in the Monte Carlo?
It's the stock 305.
Okay.
That's scheduled to be updated.
I'm going to have to get you into an LS swap of some sort. I actually have a G-body kit in the garage, so you know what's coming next.
That's the long-term plan would be to do that. Yeah, because it's I'd like that. Again, I drive that car most days, and it's certainly no bullet, but it runs okay for a 305.
What year is that?
87.
87. So the throttle body injected?
It was.
It was.
Okay.
It
was actually it actually was not. It was actually that. Remember those electronically controlled quadrajets?
Okay. Yeah.
It had that, and that
Those were
carburetor
junk.
got real. Yeah, it was. It was junk. So actually, a while back, I put a Holly, an intake, and a Holly on. Yeah, I've toyed with putting a sniper on it, so it's either going to get that or an LS one.
Yeah, it's. It depends on the era. Like 10 years ago, I would have said, you could probably, or maybe even 15 years ago, I'd say, you could probably do either or and be happy with it.
Right.
And nowadays, like in my case, it's harder for me to find small block Chevy stuff than LS stuff.
It is.
It's easier to find a Tahoe with a 5.3 than it is to find a Suburban with a 350 or a Silverado with a 350.
Think about how long ago it was that the last vehicle had a small block Chevy in it. I mean, it's been a lot of years.
2002 van, I believe.
Was that the last of it? Yeah, I knew in the 90s the trucks quit and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
I just just released a podcast today about
interesting.
that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's good to know. That is good to know. 2002.
Yeah, I think it was 2002.
It's 23 years ago now.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like that at all.
No.
And time goes by. The older I get, time goes by more and more. And think about the LS as 97 was the first LS engine. And in 2 years will be 30
30
years,
years.
of the LS. So it's
Yes.
not even the new kid on the block anymore. It's
No, when
it's
you figure the LTs that are out there now and everything else, yeah. I mean, I still think of the LT or the LS as a as a
the new one.
new motor and
Yeah.
everything. But it kind of hit me. You talk about time passing. We make a kit now for the 88 to 94 Chevy pickups.
Mhm.
And when we first started looking at that and doing some of the development research and everything, a couple of the guys talked about those being an OBS truck and an OBS truck.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, I didn't know what OBS stood for. And well, that's old body style. And it really hit me. I bought one of those trucks brand new.
Yeah. Mhm.
And for that to be, that's the old body style. It was just one of those things that kind of hits you and you get the
Yeah.
idea about.
I go through
like you say,
phases.
about time.
I like those trucks, but I don't want to pay for a nice one nowadays.
Oh, the price has gone crazy on them.
They have gone crazy. Even like the 99 to 06, the nice ones have jumped through the roof, especially the short bed, regular cab
Correct.
ones.
Yeah, because they didn't make many of them.
Yeah, they didn't.
Everybody
make
had the
many,
extended cab.
and they're basically kind of like a toy because you hate people because if you own one because you can only fit one or
Right.
two passengers.
Right.
Small guys too. You can't fit full people like me.
It's a two-seat sports car. It really
Yeah,
is. I mean, if you're going to make
just
it's a
with a
daily
bed.
driver, but yeah, with a bed on it.
It's
basically.
essentially a Corvette with a bed.
Right.
Is what it is.
Right. Right. But
that's
good-looking trucks. I mean, I really like
Mhm.
that body style. Always have.
Yeah, I go through phases. I do want to. I have like a list of cars I want to get that I will never get rid of. The G body's on that list. And funny enough, I'm not really a Ford guy, but I have like an '03 Cobra on there, an '03 Lightning on there. But I would leave it stock. I wouldn't LS swap it or anything.
Right.
Now, if I had two of them, I would LS swap one of them just to piss people off and just do something different. But I like just the way those cars came from the factory was a really good rendition of what it should be.
Yep.
And it's almost, I don't want to say perfect, but it's almost perfect just to leave those cars alone. Like the '03 and Lightning and Cobra. I think they're just perfect with the factory blower and just go.
I mean, that's a pretty good package
Mhm.
right out of the factory.
Mhm.
It's interesting you talk about that, about the engine swaps though, and we deal with this every day, selling kits and everything. And just like you saw in when we did the tour out there, we're just fixing to release a new kit for a new platform for the 240 to 260,
Mhm.
280Z cars, which are really popular. And working with some of these guys that build those cars, LS swaps are popular in those.
Oh, yeah.
And everything in those Z cars and all of that. So, it's kind of like the small block Chevy was 50 years ago. You put a small block Chevrolet in everything. And
Right.
now it's the same way with an LS. I mean, BMWs, Mercedes,
Mhm.
a lot of them you'll see LS swaps in.
Volvos.
Yeah.
My son, I helped him build the Saturn Sky with the LS swap.
Really?
Yeah, we put an LS3 in a Saturn Sky.
Well, that was a shoehorn, wasn't it? That was
It was pretty tight
Yeah.
down by the exhaust manifolds, and we found one tubular exhaust manifold that fit without spending a ton of money. But yeah, it came out really crazy. I think the dyno on that engine was we dynoed it on the engine dyno. I think it was close to 600. But you're talking about a car that probably weighs 3,200 pounds. And I can't even hardly drive that car because I'm shoehorned
You can't fit in it.
Yeah, I barely fit in it. But it reminds me of the old Shelby Cobras.
Mhm.
A lot of power, small car, small
Mhm.
roadster looking car.
Yep.
But it was a fun one to get going because the challenge for a lot of the late model stuff is getting the CAN bus stuff to work.
Yep.
So getting the tach to work, the speedometer to work. I haven't gotten a fuel gauge to work yet. I haven't figured that out. Getting the cruise control to work, getting the factory Sky throttle pedal to work with LS. That was a little bit challenging. And we got all of that stuff working. And it's a death trap, but it was a fun death trap to build.
You should talk to a friend of mine who owns Classic Instruments, and it's a Holly company now, but
Mhm.
they've got a new sending unit that's a laser.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if because and then they've got a matchbox where you can kind of match it to any other thing. And you ought to look
I
into
saw
that
a little
for
bit
them.
about
Yeah.
that, but I didn't really wormhole my way into that yet. One day when I can't sleep, I'll probably research
Yeah, that's
that.
something. But that's an interesting thing. The electronics is such a big deal now. Years
Mhm.
ago, you just had to worry about the mechanics of an engine swap, and now you've got to have the electronics talk to each other. Just you've got an automatic transmission anymore. You've got to have the electronics to control that automatically.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a question of pressure now.
Yeah,
You've got to have the electronic
you have to
control.
have everything kind of in a row to get the swaps done right. Sure, you could put an old TH400 or 350 in a
Mhm.
car, but it's kind of a mismatch when you start modernizing part of the car and then leaving part of the car kind of with the old stuff. So it almost needs all of the modern stuff, the transmission,
Yep.
the gauges, the whole shebang needs to be upgraded at the same time to make it feel right.
To make it work right, even.
Mm-hmm.
A good friend of mine owns Bowler Transmission, and
Mm-hmm.
talking to him about it, and to Mark Bowler about things, again, we laugh about our perspective on things. To me, a 700 is still kind of a new transmission.
I did that when I was younger. I put
Right.
a 700 in my car to have overdrive.
Right, so they have the overdrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that's an obsolete transmission. Mark said you can't hardly get parts for them or
Right.
anything. I mean, you've got to get into 4L60s, 4L70s, and or beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And again, all of those components have to talk to each other.
Well, now a lot of the swaps, people want the 6-speed autos or
Right.
the 8-speed or the 10-speed autos, which I thought people would stop at the 6 speeds for swaps. You see people starting to do 10 speeds even now. And it's, to me, it's stuff that I wouldn't do because I like easy stuff. So, the 6-speed automatic that's plenty for me, what I need. That's where I'll stop. So a Vintage Air, you have several generations of systems.
Mm-hmm.
The Gen 2 you said was first.
We're kind of
electronic?
sunsetting that Gen 2. That basically, we brought that into the marketplace 2000. The first Gen 2 compact came
Mm-hmm.
in analog electronics. Again, it was a pretty big leap at the time,
Yeah.
and it's been a great system through the years, but it's got some of the limitations that come along with analog technology, So now we're just introducing now the Gen 5 in those same size units, the Gen 5 Magnums you saw that are propagating now all of our SureFit kits and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they just got more features, more modern system, digital control. Again, it gives you more features. You get a variable speed blower on everything. You get electronic coil temperature monitoring
Mm-hmm.
through the ECU rather than having that thermostat you used to have. So again, it's a more modern system. You get updated electronics in the door actuators and all.
And for the most part, the systems are plug and play.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you have to run like a power and ground wire.
Pretty much.
That's it.
Pretty
Wow,
much.
that's too easy. So somebody buys a kit, they install it, they plug in basically what I'd call a communication cable on both ends.
Right.
Power and ground, and you're done.
Yep.
Wow.
Some cases you may have to calibrate the controls, but that's about a 5-minute process. And so, other than that, we try to make all of our systems very user friendly as far as installation and operation. And, we talked earlier when we were doing our tour of R&D. I mean, the most up-to-date research we have, we're still close to 80% of our systems are installed by the end user. And we're really proud of that. I mean, we spend a lot of time in our development in doing instructions that the average guy can follow, lots of pictures, lots of detail. I mean, you saw out here, we do an actual installation and walk through it so that we're confident that we know what you're going to run into.
And you have a pretty nice instruction manual too.
Yep. We try. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important to us to have that.
Now, your guys probably don't need the instruction manual to do the kits because they design them. But the first time somebody installs one, they need to refer to that, whether it's they have to use a template to drill a hole or whatever,
right?
Or where this goes, where that goes. So it is important to have those instructions for the end user, but also the shop guys need it for the first time that they're installing. If they're installing, 5 kits a month, they may not need the instructions on the 2nd or 5th kit at that point, but it's really nice to have instructions. I've gotten a lot of parts that don't come with anything, and you're just, what do I do here?
There's so many little differences though that, I mean, even our guys, when we're doing development here, you need to put yourself in the mindset. We talk about that all the time. You need to put yourself in the mindset of the guy that's doing this for the first time on his own car, and try not to take certain things for granted that you would know. You've got to be cognizant of that fact that most of these guys, it is their first installation, and you got to look at it that way and make sure you be as descriptive as you can be, have as many pictures as you can have. And so that's really critical. And we do our best to do that. We've learned a lot through the years. And, we also put all of our instruction manuals online. So if you're considering, again, you've got a 69 or 70 Camaro or something like that. You say, well, I'm interested in one of these kits. I'd like to see what it takes to put one in. I mean, you can go online, download the instruction manual, and you can see exactly what it takes to put it in.
Or like a shop guy, if he's writing a quote, he could kind of look at it and estimate a quote based on what he sees. if he's good at his job, he should be able to estimate it anyway.
Get a pretty good idea. Of course,
Yeah.
you've run a shop before. That's all well and good until you've got a 50-year-old car and the first two bolts you touch snap off, and then you're up against
problem
it.
I would see is people would put, whatever they could find from their bucket of bolts in a car.
Right.
And so it'll be, a bolt that should be, a 3/8 by 2-inch bolt, and it'll be a M10 bolt by 3-inch.
Yeah.
And you just find a lot of stuff like that. And then when you go to put it in the second time, it does not work.
No.
So I always end up with, somehow I'm always the last guy to fix everything, it seems, on a lot of cars. Luckily, I don't work on as many cars other than my own nowadays.
Well, that's a good way to be.
So I've had my first gen since '96. So
Really?
I've built
That's a
that
long
car
time.
several times. I've had 8 or 9 different engines in it. So I've had every nut and bolt out of that car. So now if I find something messed up, I'm like, what was I thinking when I was 28 building this car, the second or third time? So I have nobody to blame but myself. But it's funny that you come across your own work that I don't even remember doing.
Right.
But, I found, a Home Depot bolt or whatever it was, or, a yellow butt connector I found the other day on something. I'm like, I don't even use those. I didn't have any. How did that happen?
I mentioned I've got that 39 Ford Coupe that I've had since 84. And I had almost 200,000 miles on it. In 2014, I was coming back from one of our road tours and out to the Roadster Show in California, and the motor started going away. And so I ended up, it was time to rebuild. I mean, I had built that car when I was 21, 22 years old, and again, like you say, when I tore that car apart, man, some of the things I found, I was thinking, man, what were you thinking at this point? The other side of it, though, I didn't have any money.
Right.
And I didn't, I did. And, you're working on that car at 11 o'clock at night. You find a bolt that works. That's what you use.
You just want it to, sometimes you might just need it to get to work the next
Right.
day. But a lot of times it would just be, hey, this weekend I want to go to this car show.
Right.
I'm just going to make this happen. I'll go back and fix it later.
Right.
And then
Right.
you completely forget about it once the car is running.
Right.
You never go back to it until you accidentally find it 30 years later.
But that's a great thing about rebuilding them every now and then. You kind of figure some of the things that you weren't happy with the first time around that you'll do a lot better the second
I've had
time.
the front clip of that car off, I want to say a dozen times, and I dread doing it every time. But it's so easy to work on a car without the front clip on.
Yes.
So anytime I'm doing an engine swap, I pull it off.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because I always dread go back on it.
It's a couple extra hours, but boy, it sure, like you say, it sure makes getting to things a whole lot easier.
It was easier, and I know it's going to come off at some point another time. So what I've been trying to do, I always have the might as well effect. So in that car, it was LS swapped. I had LS2 in it. And I was already looking at what's next. I drove the car like half a mile. I'm like, what's the next engine? And I said, I'm just going to build a 427 LS. I'm just going to go for big. Whatever it costs, I'm going to build the biggest thing I could do, because then I could never upgrade it, right?
At the time.
At the time. So I built a 427 LS, and I somehow managed to build a better engine. I built an LSX engine the next time, and then I swapped that for the 427. 427 for 427. It's the craziest thing, but when you're a car guy, you're always, kind of looking for the next thing to do.
Yes.
And I've thought I would break my habit of always modifying that car, and I didn't. I just made it worse, I think.
That's the essence of hot rodding, though. And the good companies in this industry, they use that same rationale, that same philosophy through. I mean, when I look at what we're doing here now out in the plant that you were versus what we did, 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah, it's two different companies.
Yeah. And, the industry matured. The availability of higher quality parts is there. The availability, we can 3D print things now. We can CNC design parts. I mean, we can CNC design a part up in engineering, send that down to the laser, cut it out, bend it, and have it ready to try on something here in a matter of hours rather than all of that. And it's the same way with parts. We can design a louver, design something like that, 3D print it, make a mold. And it's allowed us so much more flexibility on how we design parts. It's amazing.
You're not relying on some manufacturer across town that has his own agenda.
Right.
to make you a bracket or make you a louver or whatever
He's
it
got to fit you
is.
in. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
he
making a
has to
living
fit
too.
you
He's
in.
got to fit you in. So now and that's one of the reasons we're as vertically integrated as we are. You talk about how much we do here. That allows us not only control and timing, it allows us to control the quality of it.
It
You can
does.
always watch that.
It's
So
it's a game changer when you could make as much stuff as you can in house, because now you have nobody to blame but yourself when you
right,
don't get it done.
right.
But having that ability to do everything in house, there's nobody to say no. But also, like, if you have to revise it, it's 5 minutes
Right.
to go and revise
Right.
it. I experienced that at Texas Speed doing the camshafts. So I would grind a camshaft, test it. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm testing it. At 11, I'm pulling it out, grinding another one. And I had 2 cams done before lunch, tested, had the dyno results, had the tuning done. You couldn't do
That's
that if you're
swapping a
buying.
cam fast,
Oh,
buddy.
yeah.
Man, that's
I
fast.
think I got it down to like 40 minutes running to running, ready to make pulls. So from the last pull to the next first pull. Yeah, I've done, I don't even want to
That's
know
fast.
I don't want to know how many cams I've swapped in my
Man.
life. But that was the whole thing. That's what made it good, though. That's what
Yeah.
made those parts really good at the time. And if you hyper focus on making stuff the best you can make it in house, and when somebody says, "Oh, we can make it better," they can't, because you already did. You did as best as possible at the time. But yeah, the manufacturing, bringing it in house is a game changer. And a lot of places that are reselling parts or kits of components. And I wasn't, like I said earlier when we were doing the tour, I was not sure what to expect. I thought, maybe you'd ordered some brackets from here and some brackets over from here, and you're basically making a kit, which a lot of people do. And
Sure.
there's nothing wrong with
And there's
that.
nothing wrong with that.
But you're really literally making like 99% of what goes into a
Yep.
vintage air kit
Yep.
in the back.
There's a few components we can, electronics, obviously we buy our electronics and harnesses and things like that. But as far as, any of the major components and major parts in our systems, yeah, we try to be vertically integrated.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
with our own machine shop that you saw, and our own tubing department and our own coil department, and all of that. That's important to us. It was important to Jack, and again, it was always the two things you mentioned were highest on the list. Quality control and also development. You could continue to improve your parts as you went. When you're dealing with outside sources, that's a little harder to do.
And Jack was involved with the company for 45 years?
Yes.
That's
Plus.
a long time.
Plus, yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
long time. And yeah, Jack's still involved. We still have lunch once, twice a month and everything. And he comes by to see what's going on and see people and everything. So yeah, he's still involved and still enjoys it. I mean, again, like we talked, Jack was a hot rodder above all. And, it's just what he enjoys.
And hot rodders by nature are very innovative to begin with, because, the LS swap manual, to me, it's like, it's easy to do now. But think of the first guy to do one.
Oh, yeah.
The first guy to do one, everybody probably thought he was nuts. Like, you're crazy. Nowadays, you could buy a kit and make anything. But the first one, it was same thing with AC systems.
Yes.
The first one, it probably was a challenge to do.
Yeah, it was. It was packaging when Jack first started this. He obviously couldn't do as much manufacturing himself, so he was trying to find what could he buy off the shelf at some places that would work.
Yeah.
What could he make work until he got to the point where he could pay for some tooling to have a condenser done and have some of those things done. So yeah, there was like anything else, it was a progression, at Texas Speed, when you first went there, we've worked with them for years as well, look at how much of that engine building they brought in-house, but it was one piece at a time.
Yeah.
It was a progression. So again, the successful companies in our industry, that's what they do.
Right. As far as like trade shows and stuff, you're at SEMA?
We do SEMA every year. We do about 18 trade shows a year.
18?
Yeah,
Okay.
about 18
That's a lot.
year. Yeah, we do a lot. We'll do, we do several good guy shows. We do the Street Rod Nationals for NSRA. We'll do the Tri-5 Nationals, trying to just get our parts in front of people. And there's nothing like having the opportunity to see, feel, touch, parts,
Right.
talk to people from the company and everything there. And we also use that as a way to keep a pulse on what's going on in the industry. I mean, that's my job when we go to an event is to be out walking around, talking to people. What are people building for cars? I remember a few years ago when you first started seeing the G-body cars showing up at these events and third gen Camaros and things like that, square body pickups, And so it's important for us to keep keep a handle on what's the next thing.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, what's the next thing?
And I'm sure it's constantly evolving too.
Oh yeah,
Because you probably, 20 years ago, if somebody came to your big brain meeting and said, "Hey, let's do a third gen Camaro
right.
kit,"
Right.
what would you have said back then?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, Ryan
No.
had a third gen Camaro, at that
Yeah.
time when he came to work for Vintage Air. And who would have thought at the time that we'd be doing a SureFit kit, a bolt-in system for
Right,
one of those
right.
vehicles, And again, it's how the industry has matured. And part of it as well, I think, is, that G body is a perfect example for me. I had one when I was younger in the 90s, I liked the car, so now it's here, it's 30 years later. And it'd kind of be cool to have one of those again,
Yes.
And, with our system in there, I mean, if you want to adjust the air conditioning, you've got a blower, you've got a temperature, and you've got a mode for where the air goes, It's not some touch screen where I've got to touch 5 buttons to be able to adjust that, which I like. I like the simplicity of that, So
But
I think
it's back to the roots of that car too.
Yeah.
It's not, everything in a Tesla type screen. Right. It's, you still have user input. You get to pick your temperature. You get to turn on your fan speed. So I like that a lot, where it combines kind of the old and the new.
Yeah.
So all of the new technology is hidden, but all of the classic
you try to
controls are still
maintain
there.
the user friendliness of an older system, but take advantage of modern technology and the performance that comes along with that.
So you've done the Good Guys Road Tour, I know.
Yeah.
How do you
Multiple times.
You like those ones?
I'm pretty biased. I have a good time, but I'm pretty biased. We do our own road tour every year. This year will be our 42nd, I think.
I didn't know you did your own.
Oh yeah, 42 years we've been doing them now.
How did I not get the memo?
Yeah, we do that. We go to an event every year. We've been to multiple Good Guy events. We've been to Triple Crown of Rotting. Yeah, we do a road tour.
Is there a year
every
cutoff?
year. This year, what we do is we mimic the year of the event we end up at. So like this year, we're actually going to Colorado. We're going to what's called the Early Iron Festival. And I think their cutoff is 85. So we make our cutoff 85. Next year, we'll probably go back to, or we're talking about it. I haven't decided yet. We're going to probably thinking about going back to the Triple Crown of Rotting. So they have, cutoffs like OBS trucks and things like that. So you can run a later mile. So we always mimic to make sure that people that go with us can get into the event, Good Guy events. But yeah, we go for a week on the road every year. We get usually 60, 70 cars along with us, vehicles along with us and stuff. So we have a pretty good group. God, we've got some people, Joe, that have been going for 20, 30 years. And what's cool to me is it's some of these people, that's the only time of year they see each other. They kind of get back together for the road tour. That's where they kind of have their group vacations, a little group here, a little group there.
I've seen, there's one like a road tour of Texas, I think. I can't remember the name.
I've seen that too. I haven't done that.
I tried to sign up for it, but it sold out really quick.
Yeah, I think that I
think
saw
they allowed
that.
300 vehicles, maybe, or 250.
That's a lot of cars.
That's a lot of cars
for
but
what they're doing really there. Quick. I saw that.
Even the drag and drive stuff that I do, if you're not on top of your game to buy the ticket, it sells out in minutes.
Ours do as well. I mean, we try to keep ours to a certain amount. I don't know how they do a 300 car tour like that, Tour of Texas. I mean, when you get to a town, that's just kind of overwhelming. And I mean, it's for me, I always set up our road tour and I try to find cool places for us to stop and all of that and everything. Last year we went to Des Moines for the Good Guys Mid-America Natural Heartland Nationals. And we went to the Speedway Museum in Lincoln and we got into Dennis Albaugh's collection there in Des Moines. And we stopped at several other really cool places, Hills Hot Rods and things that we do. But it becomes more difficult when you start showing up places when you've got 70 cars and 140 people.
Where do you put everybody?
Where do you put everybody? So it makes it, there are some challenges with that. But we always have a good time. And it's kind of a reinforcement of, man, get out and enjoy your car, get out and drive it and enjoy it.
And I think a lot of people like meeting kind of the engineers, the people behind the scenes, because, and it goes two ways. I always enjoyed going to the trade shows like LS Fest and a couple of Good Guys for Texas Speed. But you meet people that are happy to see you. Sometimes when I would get phone calls, if I was getting a phone call, usually it was somebody very mad about something. And it was something that I had nothing to do with.
Yep.
And it was user error most of the times. And they installed something wrong, their timing chain, and bent all their valves. And somehow I had to talk the guy off a cliff. But when you go to the trade shows, people are like, oh, I have your cam in my truck. I'm so happy about it.
Yep.
And so it actually brought up all of the employees
Yep.
that we would take because it was just a good place to be because you have a bunch of like-minded people. Everybody's happy to be there. So it's always,
Yeah,
I
they're there
always
because they
felt it
want to
good.
be.
They
Not
want to
because
be
they
there.
have to be. They're there because they want to be. And again, like you say, it's a collection of like-minded people. They're gearheads. They're interested in seeing what's new. They're always interested in seeing how somebody else did something that you might be able to learn something from. I mean,
Yeah.
that's.
So
I love going to the events and looking around and seeing how people have installed our systems, the way they did this or the way they do that. And I enjoy talking to people about that because that, I really like the way you did that. We hadn't thought about that, or, this kind of louver in this dash or this or that or something. And that's one of my favorite things that going to the events is walking around and seeing how people have
finding
done
some
that.
new ideas.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
stuff. 18 events a year is a lot of events. I project managed 9, and I know that was a lot.
Yes.
So, and that's average one every 3 weeks or so.
When you look at it,
if you look
they're
at it
kind of
over a
bunched,
year,
as
but
you
they're
say,
bunched,
So we started out at LS Fest, or not LS Fest, at LST, Lone Star Throwdown.
Yes.
That was in Conroe. That was our first one this year. And then we've got our open house coming up here. And then I think the next one is several of the Good Guy events, Columbus and Des Moines, and then the Street Rod Nationals. And, Good Guy event coming up in Dallas at Texas Motor Speedway in conjunction with the Bait Swap meet. We'll be there. Now, I don't go to all of them anymore, but we rotate our sales guys because they enjoy going to them as well. So we kind of keep a rotation there. But again, we look forward to that every year for multiple reasons.
Right. That's pretty neat. When you get like a new employee, I know there's probably a big learning curve. Do you put them through like a training program?
Yep. All our sales guys go through a training program, and any of our workers, our manufacturing people have a training program as well. We have a training program with them, and a lot of mentoring, and we do a lot of self-managed team type things out here. The guys you saw our assembly lines, the guys on the assembly line, they work amongst themselves. They trade off positions and all of that. There's a lot of cross training going on all the time.
Right.
And so we're big believers on that. So yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're building a motor or whether you're building AC, you're as good as your weakest link. And it comes down to you've got to make sure that you take care of the details and make sure you don't have that weak link.
Do you have a problem finding like new employees or young people that want to be involved?
Sometimes we've been really fortunate. We've got a really good group of people, but we're always looking. In fact, today's Wednesday. We had a little job fair today. We had several people come in and apply today and everything. So, a lot of what we do is manufacturing. So, it's different manufacturing jobs, and some of those are difficult to fill. And our sales jobs and things, those are even more difficult because that's a difficult job. Our tech guys and everything, you've got to be able to be on the phone with somebody, visualize, how that goes. You got to visualize what they're working on and try to help them through questions and make sure they make a good decision when they're purchasing parts, or if they're having an issue, why are they having this issue? Like you pointed out, a lot of times they're installation related, but you still got to be able to walk them through. Okay, where did this train come off the track?
They still need that helping hand to get back on the track.
Right. Right, exactly. And just like now, like you talked about instructions, we put so much faith in our instructions. It's funny for me to see now some things popping up on YouTube of guys doing our stuff and everything, and you and I are a little older. We wouldn't have thought about, before you start a job, you go to YouTube to see what somebody's doing. But that's become a norm now.
I don't go to YouTube for a lot of stuff because I'm usually the first one to do a lot of stuff. So I'm usually the guy. I've written many instructions actually, but usually I have to be the guy figuring out stuff.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate instructions because usually somebody else figured it out, so I don't have to do anything hard.
Well, at least it helps. You can always find a shortcut. You can always find maybe a better way of doing something, but it's nice to have something to at least get you pointed in the right direction.
So speaking of the younger people, do you have any tips for somebody that wants to get into kind of like hot rodding or in the performance business in general?
Man, I tell you, there's always a lot of opportunities in this world. there's SEMA has several different mentoring programs that they have set up and everything. And if you have a real passion for this industry, you can find a job in this industry. And there's no better people in the world. I mean, again, when I go to an event or something, I mean, my wife and I laugh because most of my friends are scattered throughout the country. That's the guys that are in this industry. They've become my best friends through the years. There's no better people anywhere, and guys like Kyle Tucker that started Detroit Speed and everything, Kyle and I grew up together on that and everything, and Mark Bowler and John McLeod and things. Those are guys that without this industry, I never would have had an opportunity to get together with and become friends with. And if you're young and have a desire to be in this industry, man, do your research. I mean, now you maybe have to think about moving to where they are, but I don't know a single company in this industry that at some point isn't looking for the right guy. And the right, we talk about it. I've spoken at some of these events and everything, You can teach a guy skills. You can train a guy how to use a tool. You can train a guy how to do something properly, but you can't teach a guy a good attitude and a work ethic and caring about what they do.
Yeah.
You can't teach that. Yeah, that's either something you have or you don't.
Exactly.
You've seen that in many places you've been at.
Yeah, you could write standard operating procedures, which is kind of made that anybody could run that equipment, but somehow or another, they will still mess it up and do something wrong somehow, even if every step's laid out. I'm not, I think that's good to have those standard operating procedures, but I think the person reading them needs to give a crap about what he's doing, but also be passionate about his craft. It's not just... If you're just there for a paycheck in the performance world, you're in it for the wrong reason.
Because if you're just there for a paycheck, I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of places in this world you can make better money than you're going to make in this industry, right? And
especially early on.
Especially early on. So this is definitely a pay your dues industry, and you've got to. But once you do, again, the people and getting the opportunity to do things that you really enjoy with people that you really like, that's not a common thing. I feel very fortunate, very blessed to be in a position, man. I enjoy coming to work every day, working with the people I work with, both here at the plant and through SEMA and through some of those organizations. And man, it's really good. It's a blessing.
Yeah. And something I noticed that I picked up on that you probably don't even notice because it's your everyday is when you were walking through giving me the tour, you knew everybody's name in the entire company. You would go by, hi, Bob, hi, Bill. And I can't remember their names, but I thought that was pretty impressive to know because I've seen people in other industries or other businesses that, having the role of president where they don't know really anybody outside of their core team, their admin team. And I think it's important to build that community up because when you're at work, you're here 40 plus hours a week. This is your family.
Yeah, it is. And again, we're really fortunate. We have some good people, and I try to get to know our people. I mean, it's hard with 163, but some of our people have been here for 20 years and up. I mean, and some, 10 years, 5 years. When we have our Christmas party every year, one of my favorite things is giving out our certificates, for 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, 20 year. And some of these guys, it's hard to believe, some of these guys we've got here, they started when they were young. Now all of a sudden they're married. Now they've got a kid or two, and things like that. Now, and all of that. And it is. Like you say, it's part of a family. And it is so true that you're here of your waking hours, a good part of your waking hours, a lot of the time. And man, I can't imagine being somewhere and being miserable like that. I can't even imagine it.
Yeah. Imagine having a normal job. I don't think I could ever go back.
I couldn't
go back.
I couldn't. Not at this stage in my life. I couldn't.
No, the performance world has an attraction to it. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, I worked at a Jeep shop and it was, some aftermarket, even if it was half aftermarket, half of it was OEM stuff. And that's fine because, the people that we were doing the repairs for were people that actually got upgrades too. And they trust you enough. But I'm not the type of person that wants to go and fix oil leaks or anything, or even just tell the guy, hey, you got a wiring problem. Because people that have to come in for repairs are mad about repairing their stuff. People that come to you for upgrades are happy to give you money for the upgrades. So it's two different worlds of of the same person sometimes.
Oh, that's 100% correct. I know some of our guys that are builders and things like that may still do some collision work on the side or something like that. And we've talked about that multiple times. You know, you bring in a car that's not running or that has a problem or that's been hit or something else. If you do your job 100%, the very best that car is going to be or that vehicle is going to be is what it was before that problem. That's the very best it's going to be, right? It's fixed. And you've spent a bunch of money to get it there. When you're doing a performance enhancement or you're putting AC in or you're doing something like that, man, it's better than when it came in. So it's a whole lot easier to be excited about it at that point.
And for the customer to pay for it, they're always excited to pay for those upgrades because they're actually getting something. Because they had a running vehicle before it broke. Now they're just getting running vehicle back and less money in their wallet. Do you have a boss?
I have a lot of bosses. I have a lot of bosses. Yeah. I mean, our number one boss in my view is always our customers. I mean, that's what we strive for. It's interesting when I was telling you we had some of the SEMA councils here a couple of weeks ago, and we did shop tours for them as well, like we did for you. And we talk about our bosses out here and our customers out here in the production area. And you know, the assembly area is the customer of the coil area, and they're a customer of the tubing area. So we were given the tour, and one of the guys said something. One of the guys asked a question about, you know, who makes sure you're doing your job right. And it was funny. One of our gals from the assembly area was there with one of our coil guys, and I asked her, I said, "Who's your customer?" And he kind of looked at me, and Sheena, from assembly, she said, "I am." And he said, "She is." You know, and the guys that we were giving the tour to laughed about it and everything, but they all mentioned it later, and they said that was interesting that they both recognized that their customer is the next person down the line.
It is. There's a really good checks and balances in that system.
Right. And these are people you work with all the time. So, I mean, you want to please your team, you know, so that's a big part of it. So, you know, from we have external customers and internal customers is the way we look at it.
So you said earlier when we were walking around that Vintage Air developed the AC system in the Ford GT.
Developed and produced, yeah. The 2004 to 2007 GTs, we did the AC for that, designed and manufactured all the systems for it. And then for the 2016 and up GT, we did the same thing, designed and developed and manufactured.
I didn't know that that it was done third party from Ford, really, which I think a lot of stuff at OEM is probably third party. We just don't see it.
Well, on a lot of those, I mean, that's a limited production vehicle. I mean, you know, they're used to building things in the millions, not building a few thousand of them. And I mean, one of the things that we're proud of here is that it was with those first generation GTs. You know, if you ever are in one and you open the clamshell on there where there's the sticker for the AC, it has the Vintage Air logo on it and everything. So we've got our logo on
that's neat.
On the Ford GT. And the control panel in the Ford GT, the original one, interestingly, kind of story on that, they were trying to come up with something innovative, a little different from what they did for control panels. And we had an engineering meeting up there, engineering and design meeting. And I took up one of our aftermarket control panels that we've had where it's basically an acrylic knob with an aluminum topper on it so that the light comes up through the knob and bathes the panel in light. And took it up there toward and plugged it in, and they loved it. So we did the control panel for the GT, and it basically had all the same technology that we're using in the aftermarket. So
that's kind of a unique setup because that's, you know, you knew probably a production number of what you were going to build.
Yes, we had a pretty good idea.
How much background time did you have before the car came about? Did you have like a 2-year span, or was it very short time?
It was a very short time. We were really fortunate in that, and again, you talked about relationships and building a network. Several years before that, I don't know if you remember the Celine S7. Remember that S7 Celine? We did the AC for that.
Okay.
And the lead engineer on that was a guy named Neil Hanneman, who also worked with Chrysler on the Viper projects and all of that. But he worked with us on the S7, and we developed a system for that in a short time. We had a real short development cycle for that. And he became lead at Ford GT, and the original plan they had was that Visteon was going to do it, and then Visteon pulled out because it was too small, they didn't want to mess with the numbers. Neil picked up the phone and called and said, "Hey, do y'all have any interest in this Ford GT?" He said, "But, you know, your package space is already defined. You got a real short development cycle. time and all of that. I mean, it was a matter of months, basically.
Did
So,
you just have CAD drawings, or did they send you a model?
CAD drawing. Yep,
CAD
they sent
drawings
us
only?
models and stuff, and yeah, everything was done initially from CAD modeling, and that was one of our first big projects we did with CAD modeling the whole thing, and
Yeah.
then made parts from those CAD models and everything, and we're going back and forth
And
to
nowadays it's
Detroit all
pretty
the time.
common to
Yeah,
use
yeah, yeah,
CAD
very common with that.
in what I would call simulating
Right.
the build.
Yeah, that was 2003, 2002, 2003 when that was going on.
And that's I don't want to say that's early in CAD, because CAD's been around ever since architects started not using paper and doing everything
Right.
on AutoCAD. So, CAD used to be for buildings and trees and landscaping, and then it
Right.
kind of morphed into our world rather quickly, it feels like. But now, CAD is everything.
Yes. Yes, and everybody shares the same platform. I mean, we'd go to those engineering meetings from Ford, and everybody's parts would be imported in.
Yep,
You'd be building the car with
you
everybody's
could
CAD
overlay
parts.
it, and you could fit it.
Everybody had their own color that they used and
could
things like
see,
that and everything. It was very interesting.
Yeah, you could see interference where
Right.
somebody else's part is
Yeah, where you had
jamming into
crashes
yours.
between parts and all of that and everything. And then it was who was willing to give up a little real estate for that to make that crash not happen anymore. It was a really interesting project for us, and we learned a lot. And a lot of the things we learned were incorporated in the later model systems that we did, and all of that. So it was a very beneficial project for us. We were very proud of being a part of that. And when they did the second Ford GT, Multimatic did that out of Canada, they came to us because they knew we had worked on the first one. So yeah, it made and we're doing some other things, some other small projects. We've worked with some of the things that we can't talk about, but we did some design work with McLaren, and we've done some things with some other vehicles as well, and everything through the years.
And probably feels good to feel that OEM guy is giving a company in Texas some attention and going to you because you're the expert. When you would think that they would have some engineering team that's already well versed on the system. So they either don't trust their team, or they wanted somebody that could do it better and quicker.
I think that's what it came down to. Turning an aircraft carrier is not an easy thing to do, and when you've got a behemoth of an organization like a Visteon or something like that, they're just not set up to be nimble to do things that, a 7,000 car project to them, the engineering just doesn't make sense for them. It's not that they're not capable. They're just not set up with that mindset. It's not what they do. They do millions of cars. That's what they're set up to do. And they're just not set up for small runs like this, for limited production vehicles and all of that. And they're used to being in the design process from the beginning, and they get to have whatever package space they want. So it was just a little different. And so I think with what we do, we're very good at what we do for our niche, and we're very respected in that realm. And it does feel good. Yeah. It's really cool to be a company that Ford looks to, or that Multimatic looks through, or some other guys like that. It makes us a better company for the aftermarket. That's our core product line.
That's pretty neat. Have you done any development with any of the electric type?
We have through the years. Yep. We actually did an electric car project years ago with Ford, many years ago, called the Think, which was a small electric car for them too. And there's some other projects we've done. The biggest challenge is seeing electric cars now. When they say electric, it's a battery car, basically what it is. But, most of the vehicles that are electric vehicles run on 400 plus volts. So you've got a compressor that's set up for that. You've got components that are set up for that. And now, we still get people asking, can I run an electric compressor in my my Camaro or in my 34 Ford or something like that? Well, the problem is now you're running a 12 volt system. And if you're trying to get a compressor assembly that's set up to run on 450 volts, Ohm's law doesn't get changed. If you run the voltage way down, the amperage and current has to go way up. So now all of a sudden you've got a system that's just not well matched.
Right.
But we have worked with electric car manufacturers in the past and continue to do some work with them. So it's just it's just different parameters that you've got to be in.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be somebody that's like a home user. I would think it would have to be at the OEM type level for that demand of the electric cars.
We work with several smaller companies. In fact, Tremec bought a company called Electric GT, and they make an electric they're making like a drop-in electric power plant for a lot of cars and stuff like that. And we do some work with them and everything. So there's several smaller companies doing those conversions, electric conversions. Icon did electric vehicles. There's some you've seen.
There are some electric conversions that people have put like a VW bus or something like that.
Yep.
So, and I'm not sure if those people actually try to run HVAC or not. I know the heat's easy.
Well, in some cases, you got to have a PTC or something like that, or you got to, if you're going to use one of our systems in that car, now you've got to decide, are you going to heat up some liquid and run it through our heater core? Because that's what our systems are set up for. So those are some of the things that you've got to, some of those parameters we talked about, on that.
No, and that was something I didn't even think about the electric stuff. We're just talking and it just kind of clicked. I'm like, I wonder, if there's a need for that. And maybe in the future there is.
I think it's going to be a part of our industry. I don't know. Who knows how big that part's going to be. I don't see internal combustion engines going away anytime soon.
I don't think they're going away anytime soon either.
You can make an internal combustion engine pretty darn efficient. The electronics now and fuel injection and all of that, and you can make an ICE engine pretty darn efficient. And there's a price to pay. Energy is energy. You got an electric car, you still got to charge it. You got to charge those batteries. That energy's got to come from somewhere.
It does. It takes X amount of energy to do whatever it is to do the work.
That's exactly it.
And, an electric car still, whether it's solar power, water power, hydro dam power, whatever it is, or burning coal.
Right. The power's got to come from somewhere.
The power's coming from somewhere. It does not just come out of the wall.
Yeah, it's not free. But the only one is if you can do solar. If you've got enough where you can get enough electricity to do it from solar. I mean, that's about as close as you can get to being self-sufficient. But that technology is not completely there yet either.
Some of the more recent cars that you've done, I know the third gen is pretty recent. You said the G-Body.
G-Body is one of our pretty recent ones. Again, we're releasing now the Z cars, the 240, 260, 280 Z cars and everything. And we've been transitioning to our Gen 5 system in all of our SureFit kits to we're going to be about the board across the board on that. So, one of our systems we're just getting ready to release now is for the Jeep Wagoneers. We're going to have a lot of coverage on Jeep Wagoneers through the years, a Gen 5 system for that and everything. So we've got a bunch of new stuff coming. We've also done quite a few new accessories. We've done some new control panels for the Tri-5 Chevys, both 55, 56, and for the 57. And we're doing more add-on control panels, upgrade control panels. When we first started doing the SureFit kits years ago, a lot of the people really wanted to keep the look of their original mechanical lever control.
Right.
So we invented a little cable converter pot, we called it, and patented it. And it was a way, basically, it's a slide potentiometer that hooked up to your cable to where your cable went, and it allowed you to convert that mechanical operation to electronic operation. Now, people aren't as concerned about that original look anymore. They're going to upgraded gauges and they're going to upgraded things. So they want a more modern looking control panel, but they still want it to bolt into their factory location.
Right.
So we're doing more of those as well.
Yeah, they don't want to have to make a whole new dash.
Right. So
we've
been doing more accessory things like that as well in the last year and a half, 2 years. So we've been busy.
Yeah. Sounds like it. It seems like, to an outsider that may not be in the car scene, they may think of only the cars that don't come with AC. But as you said, technology changes, the refrigerant changes, and there is actually a need for those cars. In my third gen, I need one of the kits because mine was a 1LE.
Right.
So you
didn't even have one to begin with.
No, I didn't have AC to begin with.
That's a rare car now. There's not many of those 1LEs left.
There's one of 279 for that year.
It's a rare car.
And you had to have an SCCA license to buy the car.
That's right.
So you had to have the license.
Yep.
You had to check box the right options, which was like AC delete and some suspension. And then it triggered the 1LE option code.
Right.
And then they also vetted you. John Heinersee, who was the GM Performance Parts guy, would call you to make sure you were getting... You were the guy that
I know they didn't want them just to go in a closet. Basically, they wanted people that were going to use them.
There was a few that ended up kind of museum pieces, but there's not that many.
Right.
Mine, for instance, has 200,000 miles on it. So it was well used.
It was
and
well
it
used.
has, I have all the photos of the guy racing it the whole time he owned it. So it had kind of that heritage with it. I can't drive it as good as he probably drives it with the improved power plant and everything.
The majority of the systems we sell, I would say more often than not, the majority of the systems we sell were for cars that had factory air conditioning, you know, especially as you get into later model, you know, as you get into the 70s and especially into the 80s, air conditioning was very common. It was far more uncommon to see a car without air conditioning than it was to begin with. But again, you're dealing with 50, 60-year-old technology and trying to get parts for them. And then even if you get the parts for them, the performance is nowhere near what we can do now. So it just makes sense. And you can, as you said earlier, free up your engine bay space. And so there's a lot of advantages to it. All new parts, you get a warranty and more efficient, you know, operation. So there's a lot of reasons to do that.
Oh, yeah. I think before too long, I'll end up giving you a call to get some AC for one of my cars.
Yeah, that third gen would be a good one.
Third gen and first gen need
it.
The first gen has the compressor in place. And that's as far as I got with that swap. So it has.
It looks
like it has AC.
Summer's going to be here before you know it.
If that car's driving this summer, like I said, I have a bad case of the mite as well. So it keeps on getting, you know, it's like I'll make one step forward and go two steps backwards a lot of times. Well, I'll find something that needs to be addressed. And, you know, while I'm there, I might as well fix this.
Right. And that's a good point you bring up. I mean, we tell people that all the time. They talk about when should I consider this? Well, you know what? If you're going to do an engine swap, if you're thinking about an LS swap or something, that's a good time. You're going to have the engine out of there. You're going to have access to you know, the old heater box and all of that and everything. That's a good time to think about doing those upgrades. You've got to, in most cases, if you're doing an LS swap, you're going to be changing gauges as well. Well, to change the gauges, you're going to probably have to pull the dash out of the car.
Apart. Exactly.
That's the time.
Some
you know?
extra wiring because you're wiring subpar from then for the new stuff.
You know, you've got to have enough. You've got to have enough wire gauge to handle what you're doing now versus what they did back then. You know, so that's a good time to be thinking about that.
Did you have a mentor that you look up to or refer to for anything? That helped you along the way in your career?
You know, I was so fortunate. I had several of them. You know, Jack brought a kid into this industry that didn't have a lot of experience with things, and man, introduced me to a lot of people. One of them was Tom Medley, and Tom was there. Pete Chaporis of Pete and Jake's, man. Pete was a smart guy in this industry, and I used to call him at night and get some advice from Pete. And even now, I have, you know, I mentioned earlier, like a Kyle Tucker from Detroit Speed and Mark Bowler and John McLeod. Those guys, we all talk. I mean, so many of us in our industry, we talk about things, you know, and that's where you can get, you know, because we'll ask when we're thinking about a new platform development. We'll check around. I mean, I'll talk to John. Hey, what are you doing with gauges? What kind of people are asking about gauges? Are they asking for an F100? You know, are they asking for a 70 F100? You know, or is it a 67 to 72 Chevy pickup? So, you know, and when Kyle first started Detroit Speed, we talked about so many things they were doing because, you know, when guys start doing these cars, you need all kinds of different parts. We have a pretty good network throughout the industry of people that have become friends.
It is amazing. I have a list of people for this podcast, and they all same way. They became friends along the way.
Yep.
And, you know, in the case with you, I reached out to Vintage Air for my book. I'm like, well, if they're doing an LS swap, surely they're upgrading to AC.
Yep.
Same reason why most people, you know, upgrade. And, you know, through that, you know, we got the photos in the book. We got all of the information. I think I sent you a rough copy or one of the other guys here, a rough copy to kind of make sure I was writing it right.
We went through it and stuff. And again, that's that shared, it's a community. I always talk about that. This industry is a community. And, you know, it's people that are enjoying what they're doing.
It definitely is. You know, you're talking about Detroit Speed. They got acquired by Holley, and then QA1 acquired them recently.
Right.
Which I think is actually really neat. Because,
I do too.
You know, nothing against Holley. Holley, you know, is a behemoth of a company acquiring a lot of companies, but I think something like Detroit Speed kind of matches their ride tech acquisition, and it kind of matches the QA1 too. So it's all
Yeah,
of that,
I mean,
all of it kind of
QA1 now,
works
basically,
together.
they've got Speed Tech and QA1 and Detroit Speed all under, I
All
think
under
they're
the
continuing to
one.
operate as separate companies, but they share information. They share,
Right.
you got a choice of good, better, best. You got a choice of are you serious about your suspension, or you want more of a street suspension? I think it gives them a lot of options in that. I think that was great
Oh yeah,
I think that was good for all the
I
companies
think that's a very
involved.
good thing that it, like I said, nothing against Holly, that it kind of out of the shadow of
Right.
Holly is
Right.
more what I mean. So I'm kind of glad because I have Detroit Speed stuff on my first gen.
Yep.
So
I've got it on my Monte Carlo.
yeah, it's really good stuff.
Yep.
So it doesn't drive like an old hoopty anymore. It drives like a more modern car. So I'm kind of glad that they do stuff the way the way I would want to build a car is kind of like the way they make the parts. So that's what I liked about the Detroit Speed, because I don't want to build, you can take a first gen or a third gen, make it a drag car.
Right.
Nobody wants to drive a drag car on the street because it doesn't drive good.
Right.
So taking it and basically modernizing it and making it more of like a spirited fun car where you can take it on some corners and stuff. Even though I'm not a corner carver, I do like to have a car that can do
you
it.
drove country roads coming down here today,
Oh yeah, and that's a drag suspension on that car on the 5th gen.
So, yeah.
But at least the 5th gen with adjustable shocks, I firmed up the shocks.
Yep.
It actually drives better than you would expect. I'm not a big Camaro fan, which sounds funny because I have 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, for not being a Camaro fan, you've got a
they
stable
end up falling on my lap, and then I end up building them, and somehow I'm known as a Camaro guy in a weird way. But driving the 5th gen, it's a comfortable car, and like you said earlier, the AC works, the heated seats work, the cruise control works. But when you go and drive that car like 3,000 miles on one of these road tours, now any car you drive is not a fun car. I would almost rather drive my pickup 3,000 miles versus a Camaro. And I love performance cars. I just don't feel like I fit in a Camaro personality, I guess.
When you get to the drag strip, though, it's fun.
Oh yeah, the car does what it's supposed to do at the drag strip, so it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Do you have any future rides you're looking to purchase, or
I'm pretty content with what I have now. I've got my old 39 that I've had forever. I've got it all rebuilt, and I take it on our tours. I've actually got a second gen Camaro as well. I've got a 72 that I've had for almost 20 years now too. So I've got that, and I've got a little 32 that I've had for a long, long time, and my El Camino, and with my Monte Carlo, I'm pretty full up, just keeping those things.
Get you to send me some photos, and we'll sprinkle them through the video of this podcast.
Yeah,
there's an audio version and a video one, and I always just like to kind of throw some stuff other than just two guys talking.
Right,
some photos to kind of help break it up a little bit. How do viewers find Vintage Air?
VintageAir.com. I mean, on the World Wide Web, that's always a great way to keep up with what we're doing. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. We're very active on that as well. And, we're always looking to interact with our customers. So any of those ways is a good way to find us. When we're at shows, on our website, we've also got our schedule of the shows we're going to go to. Man, if you're at a show that we're at, please come by and say hello to the guys, see what's new. And, let us know how you're doing and all of that. So, I mean, we're hot rodders too, and we consider ourselves part of this hot rod community.
You're definitely a big part of the hot rod community. Well, thank you very much for hosting me and showing me the Grand Tour and taking time out of your day to show me around and be a part of my podcast.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much,
Joe.
Rick.
Thank you for tuning in to the High Performance Cult podcast. A huge thanks to our guests for welcoming us into their world and sharing their insights. I also want to express my gratitude to my colleagues who helped make this show possible. For more from High Performance Cult, join our growing community at hpcult.com. Our network is a vibrant hub for media and forums, connecting enthusiasts like you with peers who share your passion. Share your vehicles, projects, and experiences, and stay updated with upcoming articles and media. If you're new here and enjoyed the podcasts, please like, subscribe, and share. We can't wait to see you next time on the High Performance Cult podcast.